Yeah, thank you very much, and I'm very happy to be here and talk to you about corporate innovation. I know there are a lot of very hot topics here. I've seen sessions on space tech, etc. So it seems to be one of the more, let's say, boring topics. But I think it's a topic that is for every corporate, let's say, it's super essential, and I'm going to tell you why. Just a quick question, so I get a feeling for who's here. Who is working in a corporate currently, so in a more established company? All right. Who is working in a university academic area? Just to get an idea. Okay, also a couple. Who's working in startups? Okay, who's unemployed? I'm just kidding. Okay. Okay, so I get a little bit the idea. A couple of corporates here, a couple of startups here. Who's investor? Investor interested? Usually they're not interested in these topics. Okay, you are here. You want to change jobs? You want to go into corporate or no? Just corporate investor. That's okay. Okay, and you have the right shirt on. I like it very much, a Pirates shirt. So why am I? This is actually Pirate Summit. This is one of our events. It's a founder event. It's a startup event. Why am I a person that should talk about corporate innovation? Well, Pirate is actually a family of companies. We do events, a lot of like Pirate events, what you saw before. We do Startup Safari, which is basically an ecosystem platform, like a toolkit for startup ecosystems around the world. We also invest in startups, and we also help corporates to be more innovative. So I spend my day, so I'm founding companies since 15 years approximately, and I spend my time 40% working with corporates, 60% working with founders and startups. And if we talk about corporate innovation, actually what we have to talk about is we have to talk about change. And I start with, I think, a very simple, maybe trivial slide. But for me, it's one of the most powerful slides, or the most important ones. That's why we start with it. If you talk about change, there are different levels of change. So you can change the methods in your organization. You can change your organization, right? You can change your behavior, or you can change your attitudes. So, but there are different levels of impact that each of these levels of change actually have. And you definitely want to be focusing there. So you want to be focusing on behavior and attitudes. You actually want to be focusing on mindset. If you take anything away from this talk, that's probably the most important thing to really understand when we talk about corporate innovation. That area you need to address. You need to change behavior. You need to change attitudes. Let's together look into what this means. Before we go into the details, I would love to quickly zoom out. So what we are seeing is we see a big trend that the lifespan of companies is over the years decreasing. Will it go up again? Nobody knows. Will it go further down? Nobody knows. But that's certainly a trend that we are seeing. The question is, why is that, right? What has changed? One assumption one could have, and there are multiple factors, but one assumption one could have is software is eating the world, something that Marc Andreessen said, I don't know, somewhere around 2001. Marc Andreessen, founder of Netscape, probably many of you know, now a very influential venture capitalist in Silicon Valley. And interestingly, what we are seeing over the last, let's say 40 years, but we see it since a little bit longer, but or 40 to maybe 60 years, that everybody was talking about, okay, computers are changing industries at an unprecedented scale and speed. And then the internet came, and that's, I don't know, consumer internet, maybe 23 years ago. Some of you might remember when you logged on with Netscape, Internet Explorer, and then that basically changed, and then mobile the smartphone, no, so not the old mobile phones, but those kind of phones. Basically invented, I would say, with the presentation of the iPhone by Steve Jobs in 2007. Who does not have a smartphone in this room? Everybody has a smartphone, right? 11 years ago, this product basically was invented. Everybody has it now. It has changed our behavior tremendously, much more than any law, any religion, any politicians, etc. could. So technology is really also changing us. And then I think the next big change is actually AI. It will yet again change everything. And the curious thing is, what we are seeing is the drivers of change are not established companies. The drivers of change are most of the time new companies, newcomers to the market, basically. If you look 2012, the most valuable companies, you see 4 tech companies in the top 20. If you look in 2017, you already see 8, and very much concentrating towards the top. And when you think now, okay, these are just the big ones that we know, and well, they are the competition. No, they are not. There are a lot of other companies coming, and if you are in a corporate and you think you won't be affected by this, you are most certainly wrong. In a couple of months ago, I went with a construction material company, so they made things like paint and certain materials. I had talks with them, and then I said, okay, let's just visit a couple startups. Let's go to Berlin. Let's just visit them, because they said, okay, they were curious about technology, but they were never thinking that there could really be disruption to the material market from a digital perspective. We went there together, and they went back. They had understood, and they saw a lot of potential where they and their, let's say, their sales chains would completely be disrupted by startups. So not their product, but the way how to reach the customers, and they immediately started to build a digital unit, etc. So it doesn't matter what industry you're in, there's some company out there working hard to take away some part, or take away or go into your value chain and potentially influence or change it fundamentally. So the question is, why do established companies have such a hard time to innovate? And what we have seen is, and what I've also explained is, with the market being so dynamic, I think one of the big factors is that the future is much less predictable than what what these companies are organized for, are designed for. Why is that? Because traditional management classically actually goes from shareholder value perspective, goes, okay, somebody at the top knows what is right, what the market wants. They tell the employees, say, hey, you have to do this. This is the process. We do it like this. You have a lot of control mechanisms, reporting mechanisms, etc. And these systems are made and are very efficient for stable environments. They are not designed for unstable environments. Also, it's very hard to spot game-changing innovations. Who would have thought that Airbnb would at some point be the biggest platform for accommodation services? Airbnb, I think, was founded in 2008, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 2009. So in 10 years, they've completely changed the whole way how people look for accommodation. And they have not only changed that, but they have changed a lot of things like rent in cities, etc. So the impact is much, much bigger than what is initially understood. And of course, if it would have been clear that Airbnb would be such a phenomenal success, of course, the big hotel chains like Hilton, they would have done something about it. But they did not see it coming, because who would want rent one of their rooms or their couch out to strangers, right? Then also one thing is what a lot of people did not grasp in the beginning, and I hope a lot of people will grasp now, is that many of these digital businesses have accelerating loops built in. This is actually the Amazon, like the napkin kind of legend that Jeff Bezos drew it on a napkin. If you look at it, it mainly holds still true today. So these are the accelerating loops, and Amazon is really, really killing it. Then also, digital appears to be often a winner-takes-most market, right? So once somebody is big enough, network effects kick in, at least in most of the platform businesses, and then it's very hard for established companies to actually compete, because then the market is already gone. And platforms also have new rules, and I would say unfair competitive advantages. So a lot of these platforms, they just push themselves in front of the customer and leave the rest of the value chain to the others. And if you are in front of the customer, the decision maker, you basically control the whole value chain. So that's an unfair competitive advantage indeed. So then the question is, how do startups, or how do these are not startups anymore, but how do these kind of digital companies, these fast companies, how do they do it? And if you look at the traditional organizational structure, and I touched upon that before when I talked about traditional management, you have at some point, you have somebody that is the maker. I'm going a little bit over the top here, but that's the one really working, right? The maker has then some kind of manager. He's then he's then controlling the other makers, that they're really doing the work that they should be doing. There's another manager, maybe a couple more, and at some point there's the big boss, right? So a very much a top-down structure, a lot of planning top-down, a lot of reporting back up. In the middle, a lot of organizational concepts that are called meetings, a lot of meetings going on. Most of these middle managers, if you look at their Outlook agendas, they basically have back-to-back meetings the whole day, and then they do emails at night or in the morning, so that is their work, right? So in an environment, and I said that before, in an environment that is unpredictable, that does not work, because you need something stable in the outside. You need to know what is going to happen tomorrow. But to be honest, nobody knows anymore. And that's uncomfortable. And I totally understand it. And that's not what the typical systems, but also the people in there are trained or educated to do. What we need more is more entrepreneurial mindset and less managerial mindset. Managers are typically trying to prevent bad stuff from happening. Entrepreneurs are trying to create, right? They're trying to make good things happen. So it's a very different kind of thing. One creating, one more looking at effectiveness, others are more looking at efficiency. How can I optimize, right? How can I make this a little bit faster? In an environment that changes so fast, you won't ever get into this optimization mode, or not that much anymore at least, because you continuously have to reinvent yourself. And Jeff Bezos, very nicely, I think, in a 2017 shareholder letter, actually described what entrepreneurial spirit or mindset, what that means for Amazon. Amazon has something like 600,000 employees, something like that, so definitely not a startup. If you look at Amazon, what he says is, and he apparently means it because his building is also called the Day One building. Amazon is a day one company. For Amazon, it's always day one. If we start to think like day two, sit back, relax, and milk the cash machine, let's say, then we are going into this stasis mode, into this declining mode. So we always have to be really vigilant and really out there and really looking at what is happening and adapting. So what does that specifically mean? Before I go into the details here, there is one question I've asked myself and always ask people that I work with: what actually stays the same in a world where everything is changing, where things are uncertain, where things are unpredictable? What stays the same? Because there are things that in your industry stay the same. And for pretty much every business, what are the things that stay the same? Any ideas? Somebody, what stays the same? For change, certainly, yeah. What else? Anybody else? People? Stupidity, yeah, okay. So, I like these things very, very much. One thing what is really the top and bottom line of your company, I think, is also the customer and the customer expectations. They change, but not the fundamentals. Customers are not going to want higher prices. They are not. Definitely not. The customers, they don't want a service that is worse than before. They always want something better, and then the customers will pay for something valuable. That's not going to change. So there are companies that are competitor-focused. They look at competitors, look at how they're doing it, copying it, and doing that better than the competitors. In an environment where everything is unstable, that might not be a very smart idea, because your competitors most probably also don't know what is going to come. Other companies are product-focused or technology-focused. He says, and I pretty much agree with that one of the best competitive advantages might be to be customer-focused, to be relentlessly obsessed with a customer, because the customer is essentially paying you. The customer is the boss, not the shareholders are paying the salaries or the managers, the top managers, but actually the customers. And if I design my company to continuously deliver value for the customers, I might be in a very good spot to survive whatever is coming. It's not the only thing, but that is one thing. What does that mean for my organizational structure? For my organizational structure, that means I don't have to think top-down anymore. So somebody on the top knows the market and tells everybody else, hey, this is the strategy, this is what we're going to do. That's the typical, like the strategic consultant approach. Okay, here, this is the PowerPoint, now just execute it. That's not going to cut it anymore. What you need to do is you need to build organizations that work inside out and outside in. It's a very different kind of thinking and a very different kind of approach, because you want to be really, really close to the market. And all of a sudden, this little maker guy is all of a sudden really, really important, because he's the one working close to the customers most of the time. And he gets a very different kind of value also for the company as an ear close to the market. And then there is entrepreneurial spirit also means that you think in complete processes. And that doesn't mean only your small kind of task, but in we have to deliver something to the customer. And in a lot of corporate structures, what I also see is that people say, we followed the process. The process KPI looks great. I have done a good job. It does not matter if you have a great process KPI if the experience for the customer is utter shit. So people start to manage proxies, right? So proxy KPIs, and not the bottom line anymore. And then one more thing is you have to be fast, really, really fast. So most decisions that are taken in corporates are way too slow, and they're taken because people want to be sure that they take the right decisions. In an environment that is unpredictable, that is unstable, we have to move a lot faster. So Jeff Bezos also in Amazon is pushing the idea of disagree and commit. So basically, let's not discuss until all the details. I'm not convinced, so I disagree. These are my arguments. If you still want to proceed, I'm 100% committed. Let's go, let's do it. Why? Because speed is important. And in an environment like that, of course, you will have failure. If you have failure, you better don't do the same mistake twice, of course, but it is okay to have failures because you need to be bold. If you need to be bold, or if you are bold, you will also do an experiment. Experiments are naturally things that fail. If you don't fail, it's not an experiment, right? Or if you cannot fail in those contexts, it's not an experiment. So, but the question is always, how fast do I fail and how good do I learn? So I'm just running through a couple of slides here to give you a couple of examples. There's a lot of discussion, everybody knows lean startup, design thinking, agile, etc. So these are typically things that you, in a corporate environment, you definitely want to know, to understand, also when to apply what. That's a slide that explains that. There are very different kind of organizational structures. Holacracy done by Zappos. I'm not a huge fan, but it's definitely better than. Or that's definitely the thinking. I very much like the thinking behind it because it goes away from the typical hierarchic structure. Then Spotify is a very good example. If you're into agile, you definitely want to check them out. A very interesting approach with semi-autonomous teams. Then Netflix, they have this freedom and responsibility culture. For example, they have a no vacation policy, not meaning that they don't take vacations, meaning that they're not counting the vacation days, and essentially everybody can take vacation when it makes sense, when they want to, have to, and also the company when it works for the company and for their peers. Buffer is always an example that often comes up. It's very much a company that is built around transparency, so their revenue is transparent on the net, but also their salaries. So everybody that goes to apply there knows already there is not a big negotiation, but these are the salaries. So everybody knows what the other people earn. Then WordPress, basically the company. Automatic, the mother company that has built WordPress, closed down the San Francisco headquarters last year because nobody showed up in the office anymore. Basically, yeah, that's really the case. And they closed it down. They have a little bit more than 500 people working there, and they're all remote. So it's a completely remote company, and also that works, right? Then about us, about Pirate, just quickly, we have over the years developed a couple guiding principles, fairly stable actually, not much has changed, just a couple things. Of course, we also have hierarchy. I think an organization without hierarchy does not work. However, ours is fluid, so hierarchies change, and in pretty much everybody is the boss in some area, right? So we have leadership is defined by followership is one thing that we say. We have a lot of transparency in our company. Speed is almost always more important. So if somebody wants to decide to do something but cannot reach the person responsible, there shouldn't be a 2-week wait. Just go for it, and we fix things later. So better to beg for forgiveness than ask for permission. These kind of thing. That's how we work. So the question now is, how does that relate to corporates? And this is all lofty and nice and pretty pictures, stuff like that. So, but what do we do now? So the main thing is, if you look at startups, then there is no startup that is an overnight success, right? It's very, very messy. And if you are a rational person, you probably would not go into startups because it's very hard, a lot of hard work, and the outcome is very uncertain. But still, a lot of people go in there, and they like this kind of messy, chaotic first period where there is exploration, where there is search for a business model, and then at some point it starts to become stable, and that's something that also the corporates. They also had this, right? every corporate also had some kind of founding moment and some kind of core, stable business where they are focused on executing or exploiting the business. What I think what we need is we need that and 100% focus on that plus something else, and we can also quickly discuss how that could what that could look like. So we need, of course, if you have a good running core business, definitely stay with that. And there are different kind of organizational principles, etc., that go with this business. But you need to be aware that you need to be searching, you need to be obsessed with the market, with the trends going on, with what the customers say, and so you need some kind of search mode also going on all the time, I think. And most of the time, the urgent, so the core business is trumping the important, which is, I think, the search business. So what I think a lot of the corporates, most of the corporates should be doing, they should be looking into developing these kind of speedboats at the fringes of their own business, related to the core business, maybe completely outside, partnering up with startups, investing in startups, so having a small equity stake to be very close, or actually buying startups, so owning them, or creating new companies. My thing is, so I'm a little bit cynical because I've seen a lot of these kind of startups or these kind of settings, and I believe the most important thing is to not do the digital transformation way, the typical one, like we all change, because I think it will be slower than the market, and the market is really, really harsh. So I think it is the best thing to do this outside of the core business, to have innovation initiatives, however they may look like, to have them. So this is the most important one, and this is for everyone in corporates, focusing on attitudes, focusing on behavior, and most of the time starting at the top. If the top management is not committed to changing that, it's not going to work anyway. So this is basically my my message to you guys, or my take on corporate innovation. I would love to take 1-2 questions, if that's possible.
Big round of applause to Manuel. Thank you, first of all. Thank you, sir, for your talk. We get a microphone down the front here, please. We have a question down here. In the front row.
Yes.
Hello, hi. Fully understand the focus on getting innovation at the fringes of the core business. Now, question to you, when you talk about core business and you mentioned the importance in it of keeping relationship with the customers, do you do this development of new innovation with actual current clients? And thus, how do you manage relationship between the innovative part development, which could be somehow outside the traditional business environment, and actually the actual guys who are already managing their relationship?
Honestly, that's a super hard question. It's always the main friction. Totally agree. It really depends on the context of that company. I've seen most of the corporates, they think they can do it because top management thinks they have an entrepreneurial mindset, but they actually don't, right? They're actually trying to prevent risk and not trying to create opportunity, and that's the usual shareholder structure. So in family businesses, I see a lot more entrepreneurial mindset. Why is that? Because they think a lot more long term. In businesses that are publicly listed, it's every 3 months, right? So very short-term driven. So maybe also the incentives don't work. They might think they're entrepreneurial, but it just doesn't work. So my main advice would be actually leave the innovation unit mostly alone. Try not to mingle with it. Install someone in your board that that has really a board level attention to that unit, but that has a lot of freedom also, and leave them as long as possible alone. That's my advice. Why? Because it's most of the time it's done wrong.
I fully agree, actually.
Very good, thank you. Any more questions? We have lady a few rows back there.
I kind of want to continue in a similar topic where you said making the innovation unit separate, but especially in corporates, you have usually an established team of experts and people that you also maybe want to tap into or pick up in that innovation. How do you then assume you have this innovation hub or whatever you've created that has come up with something good? How do you feed that back into the corporation? How do you pick up the people that are established, or do you let the dinosaurs die, or how do you make them survive?
Let the dinosaurs die. That's often a cynical answer that I give, yes. But most of the time, it works best if you find sponsors from inside of the organization. Choose them wisely, and not necessarily you have to take these sponsors, but think like a startup. This is my investor, and do I want to go with him, right? So give the innovation unit also some kind of power to also maybe say, okay, this might not be the best fit, but definitely you want to feed it back into the other structure. I like to have it loosely coupled. Not always possible, I know, but as loosely as possible, so they could also do it by themselves. That's what I would. Yeah, that's probably best. Yeah, I think we're pretty much out of time, right?
Anyone else? Just
anyone else? Yep.
Cool.
What? So I just wanted to say I'm here. I'll be right at the door. If you have questions, you can ask me all the questions that you want. I'm here a couple hours.
Very nice. Thank you very much. Please, one more round of applause, Manuel. Thank you.
Thanks.